So we've moved on to video 6 and we're still on step 8 for a little bit, and these are just adding the embroidery stitches. So we actually have covered the blanket stitch. I'll speak back to it a little bit on the sun, and then we'll cover couching and then back stitch for the sun itself. So project 3, video 6, surfs up truck. So when last we left off, I had given you directions to please do all of the blanket stitching. So you've blanket stitched here, inside the window, perimeter of the truck, perimeter of the wheels in black, perimeter of the surfboard, perimeter of each flip-flop, and then finally some inside the sun. And note, in video 5, I changed colors so you could see what I was doing. But I did, like I said, I did actually remove it and put it in the matching colors. I'm just more comfortable with that. You know, little mistakes don't show as much. And so that's how I meant to handle it. I got ahead of you a little bit, but I've left 3 rays of sun to stitch, and that's where we're at now. So you did a blanket stitch wheel here in this circular part of the comma or question mark, and then I blanket stitched all the way around in a circle like a snail to keep that circular thing going. And now again we're on the outsides of the rays. And as I stated, I got ahead of you a little bit on purpose because I did change it up some, and I encourage you to do that. As you're getting more and more confident, you know, try some new things. What I did differently was to add 3 little couching type stitches on the short sun rays, and then do the back stitch on the larger sun ray. So 3 little short stitches, and then a back stitch, 3 little short stitches, and I'm back over here to one of the large rays, or the last one I have left to stitch. And so that's what I want to show you. And again, this is just a review from project 2 if you were with us, because we've done it already. But I'm going to come up from the back about an 1/8 or 16th to an 1/8 of an inch away from the coral, edge of the coral, edge of the yellow. And I'm going to come up from the back. And again, I don't want to be stepping in between or on my blanket stitches I did there previously. I want to be right next to it. 2 ways to do this. You can do it as a stab stitch, which is I go from top to back, back to front, or, you know, front to back, back to front. Or you can, you know, do it like I say and then swoop up. It's 2 layers, actually it's 3 layers. You've got the coral, the yellow, and the sand. You decide. Sometimes it's just simpler to do it as a stab stitch. So I'm just going to go straight to the back right there. So I've got 1 straight edge. I'm actually going to go over, so I'm underneath on the back of the sand. I'm going to go over and come up on the opposite corner. So again, keeping that 16th, 1/8 of an inch away, that's where I'm at. So then I'm up, and now I'm going to draw my line and go back to the previous stitching, and again, try not to go in the threads, but go awfully close to the previous row of stitching. So it's basically just connecting, like playing that connecting game. Now underneath, my thread ended up over here. I'm going to come all the way back to the top from where I came, and then I'm going to just draw my line again using the thread as your road map. It kind of tells you what's going to look best and where you should go in. And I'm going to go to the back again. So that finishes doing a back stitch on the large ray. Then I'm going to go over. I'm just going to jump behind. I'll show you the back in a second. And I'm going to come up, and I'm going to go in. I'm going to go over to what I'm guessing is about the middle at the top of the ray. I'm going to do that again because I didn't have it quite centered like I wanted to. I'm going to come up in the front, and I'm going to go back down in the center bottom. And then I'm gonna go over just a bit, about a 1/16 of an inch or so. And again, you know, use your thread, draw that line with the thread so you know what the best position to go back in is gonna be, the straightest position. And that does it. So you can decide, is that a look that you like, where you've got basically dashes and then a back stitch, dashes and a back stitch, and repeating that throughout? Or do you want to go back like we did for the project 2 and just do a back stitch on all of them? It's a personal choice. Do something fun, try something different. You can always remove those stitches and try again if it's not exactly what you want to see. So I'm just going to leave my, I'll tie a knot later when we're off camera, but I do want to show you what the back looks like. Let me move that out of the way. So these little jump stitches, they represent where I have done the either back stitch or the dash lines on the previous side. And that's a-okay. It should absolutely look like that. All right, so again, we're doing step 8. And we talked about blanket stitching everything. We've done the back stitch. And now I want to show you a different kind of couching. It's actually very similar to the starburst that we did in project 2, the sun and sail. We're going to now couch over the small circle and the medium circle on your tire. And we're basically going to create a hubcap with spokes. So I'm gonna come up at the center. So I've got to figure out what I think is center. And you can see me, I'm not measuring anything. I'm using my eyeball. Those people that have trained, have sewn for a really long time, whether it's this kind of stitchery or garment sewing or quilting, we get a really good eye for just what we call eyeballing it. You'll get better and better at it. I know I need to be in the center, and I know I want my first 2 couching lines to kind of line up with the bottom of the truck. The big thing I want you to note here is I'm not jumping from one side of the gray all the way over to the other side of the gray. I'm basically doing half of it. The reason I've chose to do half of it is that leaves an awfully big stitch. Half is plenty big enough. Some people would call that, if that was on a quilt, we would call that a fingernail or a toe catcher, where if you were sleeping on it, we could lift that up pretty easy. On this, since it's stitchery and it's meant to be decorative, I don't think it's an issue, but I don't love my stitches getting too much bigger than that, and that's about a ½ an inch. Then I'm going to come all the way back to my center again, trying not to split those stitches, but to come awfully close where I came out originally. And then I'm going to draw the other half. And again, my guideline is trying to stay even for this first 2 stitches with the bottom of the truck. And it's a little crooky right there, but again, that's not going to hurt my feelings, and I'm just going to keep going. Remember that we want progress over perfection. I'm coming back to the center each time I do whatever half or quarter. And I'm going to draw my line with the thread, and I want to see, you know, 1/4 of a piece of pie here and 1/4 of a piece of pie here, if I can, and know that I'm pretty good. So I'm going to go to the back, and again, this couching is looking like stab stitches, where I'm coming up to the front and then I'm going to the back. We're at 1, 2, 3, 4 layers on some of this, or at least 3 layers. So I find it a little hard to do, you know, a kind of a swoop stitch. It's just easier to stab it and go. I'm going to turn it a little bit. Again, use my thread to find ½ and ½ or 2/4 of my pie if you're looking at a circle, and then put my thread into the back right where that imaginary line of my thread kind of was. So at that point, I've got a cross. What I want to do now is between each one of those 4ths of the tire or the hubcap and the gray wall is to now find the center again, and just split the difference between each one of those. So again, I'm going to draw the line with the thread, go into the back, pick it back up, find the center again, and again draw the line and get that into. So we went from cutting our pie or our tires into fourths to now we'll have 8 different pieces. At this point I've got 6, and again each time I'm returning to center, trying to get it in there as close as I can to center my needle. If you find that it's hard to get your needle through, you might be trying to stitch through your previous or your original knot. Pause for a second and check that out. Don't try to stitch through a knot. It will just cause problems for you. And then one last one, and we've got it in 8. So we went from halves to fourths to 8, some fractions of getting the wheel, the tire and hubcaps to look like spokes. And that's couching. So we blanket stitched around the black and we couched over 2 things with the gray, and that absolutely should hold it down good enough. I had already done the previous one, so I'll show you that again. At this point we've got both tires done. So we have done in this step, talked about the blanket stitch, did the back stitching and a little bit of couching on the sun, and then couched the tires. And I'll see you back for the next stitches.